Semicolons. Now, semicolons freak a lot of people out. They can be really confusing to some people, but really in reality, they're pretty simple. Let me explain. Semicolons can only do two things. The first thing they can do is combine independent clauses. Now, if you remember from our clauses and phrases video, independent clauses are just complete sentences. So semicolons can combine complete sentences. That is their first job. Their second job, which does not happen very often, is they can act almost as like super commas in lists when items within the list contain commas. Now that last part's really important. They can only punctuate lists when items in the list already have commas. We'll look at an example in a second, but keep that in mind. Semicolons really aren't as scary as they might seem because they only do these two things. If you can remember these two things, you'll be set. Now their first job is to combine independent clauses. Now, independent clauses are complete sentences. Let's look at these examples. The one on the top is correct. The one on the bottom is not correct. Let's start at the top. The man went to the store to buy milk. That is a complete sentence. We're good so far. Then we have our semicolon, followed by, he also picked up some eggs and a loaf of bread. That is also a complete sentence. We have a semicolon in the middle. Everything looks great. And notice here that he is not capitalized. Do not capitalize after semicolons. Now let's look at the bottom one. Although the man went to the store to buy milk, semicolon, he ended up picking up some eggs and a loaf of bread instead. Now think back to our clauses and phrases video. Think back there. You should have caught this. Although the man went to the store to buy milk, that is not a complete sentence. It is not an independent clause, so we cannot put a semicolon after it. There should be a comma there instead. So remember, first job that semicolons do is they combine independent clauses. Let's move on. The next thing they can do is act as super commas in lists. Now, if you remember from earlier in the video, I said they can only do this if items in the list already have commas. So let's look at our top example. That is the correct one. When we went to the farmer's market, we bought shiny, ripe apples, sweet, juicy grapes, and plump, firm pears. Let's look at the bottom one. When we went to the farmer's market, we bought apples, grapes, and pears. Now look at the difference between these. In the top one, we still have three items in our list. We have shiny, ripe apples. Apples is our noun. Shiny and ripe are coordinate adjectives with a comma between them. However, all three words are the first item in the list. And because there is a comma between shiny and ripe, we're okay to use a semicolon after apples. And here's why. No one would ever be able to figure out this sentence if we didn't. If we just put commas between the items like we normally would in a list, it would get pretty confusing because we would have we bought shiny, comma, ripe apples, comma, sweet, comma, juicy grapes, comma, and plump, comma, firm pears. It would be almost impossible to figure out what items were actually being listed or what commas were part of items. It would get super confusing. So that's why we use the semicolons here. But remember, you can only do that if the items in the list have commas. Now let's look at the bad example, the one on the bottom. This one is incorrect. And you should already have an idea of why. It is incorrect because the items in the list, apples, grapes, and pears, do not have commas inside of them. So we don't need the semicolons. We should just have regular commas punctuating this list. And if you're not sure how to do that, check out the commas punctuating lists video that I've created for you. Now, if you have any questions, make sure to let me know. But remember, semicolons are your friend. They are not scary.